Hello, everybody, and here I am talking about Iron Banner once again. But this time, I wanted to look at the many things that came together to make this Iron Banner be not so good. Now, please understand that I'm not saying that this mode is terrible and impossible to have fun with, and I am very aware that there are people that enjoyed this Iron Banner. And if you were one of those who had a great time, I am genuinely super happy that you did. But there were absolutely some fundamental issues with this Iron Banner, and I want to examine what those were and how they could have been avoided and can be avoided in the future. So before we delve into the issues, I do want to point out that with the most recent TWAB from Bungie, they are making changes to Iron Banner that will help with some of these issues that we experienced this time around. And I do appreciate those changes coming in. But this Iron Banner was interesting. It was interesting. So first, let's look at the mode and the timing of bringing in such a mode. So Fortress is a mode all about controlling points. You don't get score for your team by doing anything else, so naturally supers that help control points are going to be stronger in this particular mode, which is partially why we saw such a big uptick in Bubble Titans. But even before Iron Banner launched, if you hopped into the comp playlist or played trials, especially during capture point trials, you would have already noticed that Titans with shoot through shields, bubbles, overshields, etc. were and are the meta. So bringing out a mode that caters to a class and a playstyle that is already one of the strongest and a huge part of the meta is a bit of a miss. Now, I do totally understand that these modes were obviously created and planned out way ahead of time, but when we just came from a season with a new Iron Banner mode, Eruption, that more people seem to enjoy than not, it would have been nice if Bungie were able to pivot when seeing the meta before Iron Banner came out. This is obviously a deeper discussion about Bungie's ability to react to things quickly and make changes accordingly in PvP. So I do understand that this may not have even been a possibility to change on a whim. And maybe they shouldn't have. Maybe my idea sucks. But I do think that when you manage to create a successful mode that people tended to enjoy, leaving it alone for a little bit or having it rotate between Fortress and Eruption would have been a good idea. I don't know. We saw something similar happen when Trials was brought back. First week, massive success. Second week, Bungie felt the need to change things, and we know how that ended up. Anyway, I get that that may not have been possible regardless. However, something that I do think is very possible to change on a whim when noticing what has been very strong in the Crucible and knowing that you have a mode coming out that's all about capturing and controlling an area is to change the subclass required to complete the daily challenges. It was Void and it was Stasis. And what's really good in capture points? What's really good in the meta? Void Titans. Bada bing, bada boom. Requiring the player base to pick either Void or Stasis for the daily challenge was, in my opinion, quite a bad choice. Now, people would have probably ended up playing Bubble Titan anyway after they completed their challenges, but having different subclass requirements would have really made it not so oppressive. And before anyone yells at me, I do understand that there are ways to deal with the bubble. I also totally get that there are people who enjoyed putting together a loadout to deal with the bubbles. But I think having to craft your entire build and playstyle around dealing with one super can get a little bit annoying, especially when you're going to be playing a lot of Iron Banner for a certain unique shader. Which brings me to my next point, the Iron Banner shader. Now, I think that we can all agree that it's awesome to have a unique shader via in-game activities that we can earn, but there were a couple of problems with placing the shader where they did. So this shader turns certain armor into chainmail, and this shader was put at rank 16 heading towards your second reset of your Iron Banner rank. That is a lot of playtime in a playlist that a lot of folks aren't enjoying, in a meta that people are also not enjoying, and in a game mode that isn't very rewarding at all, which I will get to in a minute. Especially when Bungie didn't tell us when the next Iron Banner is going to be until the Thursday after Iron Banner already ended. So you had a lot of people who didn't know if they would be able to play the next Iron Banner because they didn't know the date, doing whatever they could to speed run getting the shader because the rep gains were also not great. This led to people either AFK farming, allowing the other team to capture all the points and then basically just playing it like Clash, etc. because the points you gained were so wildly unbalanced between winning and losing, and I think you should have gained more points for winning, personally. Keep losing at the exact same amount, but increase the amount you gain from winning by a large amount, because the matches tended to be fairly long, especially with the added SBMM and team based matchmaking, making games as close as they can be. I don't think awarding significantly more points for winning would have been unreasonable, personally. I'm sure people would still end up doing this type of farming method because they weren't enjoying the mode or the meta or the experience. But if you were rewarded significantly for winning, I'm sure that a good portion of folks would have ended up just playing normally because the gains would have been so substantial if you ended up pulling out a win. So I don't actually think it's terrible to have this shader be after you reset once on your way to a second reset. If we changed the daily challenge to make the experience a bit better, reward people handsomely for winning, let people know ahead of time when the next Iron Banner will be, so they'll know if they do need to grind like crazy during this 1 week, or if they'll have a little bit more time. Or with the change that Bungie is actually making, by adding an extra Iron Banner week, making Iron Banner happen once per month. Then I think having a reward that a lot of people desire, being that far into your Iron Banner ranks, wouldn't be a bad thing. But as it stood, having to play that much of this Iron Banner in 1 week was not great. Now let's talk about rewards. Blowouts. Everyone got their hair did and are looking beautiful. That goddamn rocket launcher. I didn't even bother looking at perks anymore because its very presence annoyed me. Not only were we getting spammed with a regular Crucible reward during Iron Banner week, but the drop rate for Iron Banner stuff was abysmal. And it does concern me that this might be the path we're taking in general when it comes to making players grind a thing they don't want to do to get an extrinsic reward. The dungeon with the cowboy hats was another example of this, and I really genuinely do not think that it's bad to have sought after rewards be something that you put a lot of time into to achieve. I actually think that that is a great thing. But the experience needs to be rewarding in other ways whilst you're working towards the thing that you want. Otherwise, you just end up doing a whole lot of gameplay for one thing that you really want, and the rest of the time that you're playing towards it, you're just not having fun at all. There were many people who I talked to who played a lot of Iron Banner and were still missing armor pieces on characters. So if you wanted to grind some high stat Iron Banner armor with the allocation that you wanted and grind for guns with the specific role that you wanted, that was going to cost you a lot of playtime and a lot of in-game currency to focus engrams to achieve. Now, the focusing engram issue is also being addressed, and Bungie will be making it cheaper to focus engrams. So that is really great. Thank you so much, Bungie, for that. That's going to be really great, especially for people who haven't been playing for 8 billion years and don't have a ton of legendary shards in reserve. In my opinion, during Iron Banner week, it should be raining Iron Banner loot. I vaguely remember talking about this in Destiny 1, actually. I just had a flashback. No regular Crucible drops should be happening, in my opinion. And instead, all of those blowout rocket launchers should be Iron Banner armor or weapons. If we are putting a very desirable reward deep into the ranks of Iron Banner, which, like I said before, I don't think is a bad thing, then it should be incredibly rewarding to be sitting in that playlist and playing. Make it rain loot! Iron Banner will only be around for 3 weeks out of a season. A season is 3 months. Not everyone will be able to play all those weeks. So just give the people plenty of rewards. I really don't see a point in being incredibly stingy with this particular thing. And lastly, I want to talk about connections. I'm sure not everyone had an issue with connections, but I certainly and many others saw stuff I haven't seen in years going on in there. I saw things that I rarely saw ever at all happening all the time. Yesterday, I uploaded a short showing a couple of the lag moments I experienced. If you want to check it out, I'll have it linked. Fallout Plays also put out an Iron Banner experience video showing it off beautifully, if you can use the word beautifully for this. The type of lag I was seeing was very consistently being meleeed to death by someone nowhere near me, across the map even, and this wasn't something that just happened sometimes. This was happening almost every game. People walking into walls, skipping all over the place, and killing you from the other side of the world. And it makes sense that connections would be worse in this Iron Banner. This Iron Banner saw the introduction of skill based matchmaking, which wasn't there before. I'm sure we've all heard everything we need to hear about SBMM, so I won't go into that. But Bungie's SBMM in general is pretty strict, and they coupled it with a new team based matchmaking, which is also very strict. Now, I'm not here to debate whether those things are good or bad, because you can believe that both of these ideas are the best things ever. But in a peer to peer game with a not so huge PvP population, having multiple very strict matchmaking criterias is going to cause more lag, I would assume. And certainly that's what I experienced and a lot of other people's experiences. We also still had the freelance node available, even though team based matchmaking was a thing, so the population was split between those two nodes, causing a lower population in the main Iron Banner playlist, which, again, I assume could end up causing more connection issues. So, the TLDR of all of this is that most likely there were some unavoidable issues that were bound to arise with this Iron Banner, mostly with the meta and it being a capture mode. But there are things that I do believe Bungie could have had the foresight of and made adjustments before Iron Banner launched to help alleviate some of the pain points and prevent the AFK farming that happened. In my opinion, those would be not making Void be a part of the daily subclass challenge, making wins be more rewarding, keeping the loss amount the same but giving players a lot more points for sticking in a game and winning, announcing when the next Iron Banner will be ahead of time so those knowing they could play the second week didn't feel the pressure to grind as soon as possible for the shader, having 3 Iron Banners per season right from the get-go because I feel like 3 weeks of Iron Banner per 3-month season just makes sense, removing regular Crucible loot and having only Iron Banner loot drop and increasing the drop rate of all Iron Banner rewards, having either just team-based matchmaking, which I think would deal with a lot of people's issues without needing SBMM, but that's a whole different video, or just having SBMM. Having both really seemed to not work out so great, especially with still having the freelance node enabled. And I think that's it. I tried to pick changes that I don't think are super unreasonable that Bungie could have done to make this Iron Banner be more of a success before launching it. And I know that there are bigger changes that I would have liked to have seen, but I also understand that you can't just wave a magic wand and make big, massive changes happen on a whim. So what was your biggest pain point of Iron Banner, or did you enjoy it? If you did, please let me know. And please don't attack people saying that they enjoyed Iron Banner anywhere online, guys. I know most of you here are really dope people. I've seen incredible conversations from you guys and with each other. But if someone is enjoying something that you're not, it's honestly really okay. We can all give our feedback, positive and negative, without attacking other players in that feedback. Because after all, Bungie is the one that needs to make the changes for us, and attacking other players of the game doesn't achieve anything. So I would like to know whether you loved it, whether you didn't love it, what were your biggest pain points, what were some reasonable changes that you think would have been good to put into this Iron Banner before it launched to maybe have it be a little bit better. I personally would love to have rotating game modes. We're having all of these game modes that are 6v6, so you wouldn't have to worry about differences in team sizes. And we're making these new modes for Iron Banner, and then we kind of just don't really have access to them for long periods of time. So if we're putting a lot of effort into making new modes, I would love to have them rotate personally. That would switch things up. It would switch up what people are using, how people are playing. It would just be, I think it would be nice. Anyway, let me know in the comment section all of your thoughts and ideas, and I'll see you later. Bye.